Good afternoon, everyone. At this juncture, we, the Group 4, are going to present our report from the Module 4 entitled Rizal Travel in Europe, United States, and the publication of Noli Tangere. Without further ado, to begin our meaningful discussion, may I call on to Miss Judinel Corona to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear God, Father of all, thank you for today. Thank you for ways in which you provide for us all. For your protection and love, we thank you. Help us focus our hearts and minds now on what we are about to learn. Inspire us by your Holy Spirit as we listen and write. Guide us by your eternal light as we discover more about the world around us. We ask all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Miss Judinel, for that meaningful prayer. Before we formally start, let me first introduce my groupmate. Let's watch this short video. Hello everyone, my name is Digital Espiritu. Some of my professors call me Jay, so you can call me Jay. I am a student of Mindoro State University taking AV English. I am 20 years old, currently living in Dulangan Uno, Baco, Oriental, Mindoro. Some facts about me is that I love to read and collect books of all kinds. I love to watch movies and series from different countries. And lastly, sometimes I am misidentified as a girl or lesbian, but it's okay.
Hello everyone, I am Judinel P. Corona and you can call me Judinel. I am 20 years old and I live in San Jose Uno, Nauhan, Oriental, Mindoro. I graduated at Melgar National High School and currently studying at Mindoro State University. Facts about me. I love to eat cheese-flavored snacks. I love watching the sunset. And I am a loving person.
Good day, beautiful people. This is Jinber Fanyel, but you can call me Baby for short. 23 years old, currently residing at Comunal Calapan City. Wanna know something about me? I love to chase girls away. And I have this very important saying in life that if you want to be successful, don't believe or listen to any saying.
Hello everyone, I am Charles Salarde, but you can call me on my nickname CJ or Charles. And I am 21 years old, but I live in Santa Rosa dos Baco, Oriental, Mindoro. And I graduated at Baco National High School, and I currently studying at Mindoro State University. Fun facts about me, I love chocolates. And I love to watch anime, and for the last, I'm a religious person. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Agustin M. Garong VI, a student of Minso Calapan, AB English 3H1. I am currently living here in Barsinaganawan, Oriental, Mindoro. I'm 21 years old, and I love music, and I will always love music. Have a good day ahead, everyone.
Hello everyone, I am Janice G. Garcia, a student in Mindoro State University, Calapan City Campus, taking AV English. I am currently living here in the Onauhan, Oriental, Mindoro, and I am 21 years old. Some facts about me. I love music. I am responsible for my own happiness. And lastly, I am a lovable person even if I have been rejected by the others. Have a good day. Thank you.
And without further ado, let's now begin our report. Rizal's Secret Mission. Rizal's studies continued in UST until he was unhappy at the Dominican institution. After finishing the fourth year of his medical course in UST, Rizal being disgusted with the method of instruction in the Dominican-owned university and the racial prejudice of the Dominican professor against Filipino students, he decided to study abroad. He predicted that his decision of studying abroad would not be favored by his parents. He did not ask their blessings, and aside from studying in Spain, he was on a secret mission. This mission was to observe keenly the life and culture, languages and customs, industries and commerce, and government and laws of the European nations in order to prepare himself in the great task of liberating his oppressed people from the Spanish tyranny. Rizal's brother Pasiano conceived Rizal to go on a secret mission, and also Pasiano gave his blessing to Rizal to go on the secret mission and continue Rizal's studies in abroad. Rizal's departure for Spain was kept in utmost secrecy. Even his parents and sisters were not informed about the departure in Spain. Rizal's departure for Spain was kept secret to avoid detection by the Spanish authorities and the friars, and even his own parents did not know because his mother would not allow him to do so. Rizal left the country in early morning of May 1, 1882 to pursue further studies abroad. Rizal was 21 years old on the moment that the day he left of his parting from his family, friends, and loved ones. Those who saw him were his brother Pasiano, his sister Neneng and Luciana, his uncle Antonio, Pedro Paterno, Mateo Evangelista, the Ateneo Jesuit father, and some intimate friends. Pasiano gave him money, Saturnina gave him a diamond ring, Ateneo Jesuit father gave him a letter of recommendation for Barcelona. His travel passport issued the name of Jose Mercado due to the fact that Rizal was popular, and it was changed to avoid detection by the Spanish friar. Jose Mercado was a name of his cousin from Binyan. He was riding the ship Salvadora before his departure. He wrote a farewell letter for his beloved parents and another for his sweetheart Leonor Rivera. He writes in his diary, "My country, my love, my people, I leave you now." May 3, 1882, Rizal departed on board the Spanish steamer Salvadora bound for Singapore. During the voyage, he carefully observed the people and things on the board the steamer. There were 16 passengers. He was the only Filipino, and the rest were Spaniards, British, and Indian Negroes. Captain of the ship was Donato Lecha, befriended Rizal. To kill boredom of the voyage, Rizal played chess with his fellow passenger. He then defeated them many times, for he was a good chess player. On May 9, the Salvadora docked at Singapore. He then stayed at Hotel de la Paz and spent 2 days on sightseeing tour of the city. He saw the famous botanical garden, the beautiful Buddhist temples, the busy shopping district, and the statue of Sir Thomas Stanford Raffles, who was the founder of Singapore. After days of staying in Singapore, Rizal boarded the ship the Gemma, which was a French steamer, and left Singapore for Europe on May 11. The Gemma was a larger and cleaner vessel which carried more passengers. French was spoken on board, and Rizal attempted to converse with his fellow passenger in French, but he found out that his book French could not be understood, so he spoke a mixed Spanish-Latin, and with the help of sketching on paper by conversing daily with a French passenger, he then was able to improve his knowledge of the French. On May 17, the Gemma reached Point Gal, a seacoast town in southwestern Ceylon. Rizal was unimpressed by this town. The following day, the voyage resumed towards Colombo, the capital of Ceylon. After a few hours of sailing, Rizal reached the city. Rizal was amazed by Colombo because of the scenic beauty and elegant building. From Colombo, the Dijima continued the voyage crossing the Indian Ocean to the Cape Coast of Africa. Rizal sighted the barren coast of Africa for the first time, which he called an inhospitable land but famous. The next stopover was in Aden. He found the city hotter than Manila. He was amused to see the camels, for it was also his first time seeing them. From Aden, the ship proceeded to the city of Suez, the Red Sea terminal of Suez Canal. Upon arrival, Rizal disembarked and went sightseeing. What impressed him was not the beautiful moonlight, which reminded him of Calamba and his family. The Gemna took 5 days to traverse the Suez Canal. Rizal was thrilled because it was his first trip through this canal, which was built by Ferdinand de Lesseps. At Port Said, Rizal landed in order to see the interesting sights. He was fascinated to hear multiracial inhabitants speaking a wide variety of language. From Port Said, the ship proceeded on its way to Europe. On June 11, Rizal reached Naples. The city pleased Rizal because of its business activity, its lively people, and its scenic beauty. He was fascinated by the Mount Vesuvius, the castle of St. Telmo, and other historic sites of the city. The night of June 12, the steamer docked at the French harbor at Marseilles. Rizal bid farewell to his fellow passenger. He visited the famous statue left where Dantes was imprisoned. He stayed two days and half days in Marseilles. On the afternoon of May 15, 1882, Rizal left Marseilles to proceed to Spanish via train. He crossed the Pyrenees and stopped for a day at the frontier town of Port Bou. After the passport inspection at Port Bou, Rizal continued his trip by rail, finally reaching Barcelona on June 16, 1882. His first impression of Barcelona was unfavorable. He thought of it as an ugly, dirty, and its residents are inhospitable. Later, he changed his impression and liked the city. He found it was as a great city, with an atmosphere of freedom and liberalism. He also found its people were open-hearted, hospitable, and courageous. He enjoyed promenading along Las Ramblas, which was famous street in Barcelona. Filipinos in Barcelona were some of his classmates in Ateneo welcomed him. They gave him a party at Cafe Plaza de Cataluna. After toast, Rizal in turn gave them the latest news in gossips in the Philippines. In Barcelona, Rizal wrote a nationalistic essay entitled Amor Patrio, Love Country, which was his first written article on the Spanish soil. He then sent his article to Basilio Teodoro Moran, publisher of Diaryong Tagalog. Basilio was deeply impressed by the article, congratulated Rizal, and asked Rizal to publish more articles. While living in Barcelona, Rizal received bad news about the cholera outbreak ravaging Manila and the provinces. Many people died and more were dying daily. Sad news was that his love-beloved Leonor Rivera was getting thinner because of the absence of her loved one. Also, Pasiano advised Rizal to continue his medical course in Madrid. Heeding his advice, Rizal left Barcelona in the fall of 1882 and proceeded to Madrid. On November 3, 1882, Rizal enrolled in the Universidad Central de Madrid. He took courses, medicines, and philosophy and letters. Aside from the two major courses, he also studied painting and sculpture in the Academy of the Fine Arts of San Fernando. He took lessons in French, German, and English under the private instructor and assiduously practiced fencing and shooting in the Hall of Arms of Sans y Carbonell. Rizal lived a simple life in Madrid and knew that he came to Spain to study and prepare himself for the service of his fatherland. He budgets his money and time and never wasted a pasata for gambling, wine, and women. On Saturday evening, he visits the home of Don Pablo Ortiga Rey, who lived with his son and daughter. Don Pablo has been city mayor of Manila. Rizal then had a love affair with Consuelo Ortiga y Perez, the daughter of Don Pablo. Rizal, being a lonely man in a foreign country and far from his natal land, was attracted by Consuelo's beauty and vivacity. Consuelo Ortiga y Perez and Rizal's love did not flourish because he was still engaged to Leonor Rivera, and the friend of Rizal is also in love with Consuelo. On June 1883, Rizal left Madrid to visit Paris. He stayed at the Hotel de Paris but then moved to a cheaper hotel. Like all tourists, Rizal was charmingly titillated by the attractive scenery of Paris, such as the beautiful boulevards, the Opera House, the Place de la Concorde, the Arc of Triumph, the Bois de Boulogne, the Madeleine Church, the Cathedral of Notre Dame, the Column of Vendôme, the Invalides, and the Versailles. Rizal closely observed the French way of life and spending many hours at the museum in Spain. He became close with prominent Spanish liberal and Republican Spaniards who were mostly Masons. Rizal was impressed by the way the Spanish Mason openly and freely criticized the government policies and lambasted the friars. In March 1883, he joined the Masonic lodge called Acacia in Madrid. His reason for joining was to secure Freemasonry's aid in his fight against the friar in the Philippines. Later, he was transferred to Lodge Solidaridad, where he became a Master Mason on November 15, 1890. Still later, he was awarded the diploma as a Master Mason by the Grand Orient de France in Paris. After departure for Spain, things turned from bad to worse in Calamba. Harvest failed on account of drought and locusts. Also, the Dominican-owned hacienda increased the rentals of the land cultivated by the Rizal family. Due to this crisis, allowance of results were many times late or sometimes never arrived, causing too much suffering to him. On June 21, 1884, Rizal completed his medical course in Spain. He was conferred the degree of licentiate in medicine by the Universidad Central de Madrid. In the next academic year, he studied and passed all subjects, leading to the degree of Doctor of Medicine. Rizal also finished his studies in philosophy and letters with excellent ratings. And on November 20, 21, 22, 1884, Rizal was involved in student demonstration. They were fighting for Dr. Miguel Moraita, who proclaimed that the freedom of science and the teacher's such liberal view was condemned by the Catholic Bishop of Spain.
Good day, everyone. Today I am going to discuss Rizal's life in Paris to Berlin. In 1885, after completing his studies at Central University of Madrid, Rizal, who was a 24-year-old, went to Paris in order to acquire more knowledge in ophthalmology. After completing his studies in Spain, Rizal went to Paris in Germany for his specialization in ophthalmology. He chose this course of medicine because he wanted to cure his mother's growing eye ailment. He still hasn't forgotten his secret mission, which is to observe the customs and lifestyle of the Europeans so that someday he will render service to his fatherland. He was 24 then. He stopped over at Barcelona on his way to Paris to visit his friend Maximo Viola, who is also a medical student and a member of a rich family in Bulacan. On November 1885, Rizal was living in Paris where he sojourned for about 4 months. He worked as an apprentice of Dr. Louis de Weckert, who is then a leading French ophthalmologist, and with his master. While not working at Dr. Weckert's clinic, Rizal visited his friends such as the family of Pardo de Taveras, Trinidad Felix Juan Luna, and Felix Resurrection Hidalgo. Rizal spent many happy hours in the studio of Luna. Luna discussed with Rizal various problems on art and improved his own painting technique. Rizal posed to some painting of Luna. He was one of the Egyptian priests in Luna's painting, The Death of Cleopatra, where Rizal posed as an Egyptian priest, The Blood Compact, where Rizal posed as Sikatuna. In Berlin, Jose met and befriended several top German scientists, Dr. Fyodor Jagor, Dr. Adolf B. Meyer, and Dr. Rudolf Virchow. Next is in Gay Paris. Senior Eusebio Corminas is the editor of the newspaper La Publicidad. Miguel Moraita is the owner of La Publicidad and a statesman. Caroline's Question is an article Rizal gave to editor Corminas, a controversial issue for publication. January 1, 1886, when Rizal wrote a letter for his mother to reveal that he was rapidly improved his knowledge in ophthalmology. Next is Rizal as a musician. Rizal had no natural aptitude for music, and this he admitted. He studied music only because many of his schoolmates in Ateneo were taking music lessons. In a letter dated November 27, 1878, he told Enrique Lete that he learned the solfeggio, piano, and voice culture in 1 month and a half. He was a flutist in various impromptu reunions of Filipinos in Paris. Some of his compositions are Alinmang Lahi or Any Race, a patriotic song which asserts that any race aspires for freedom. La Deportación or Deportation, a sad danza composed in Dapitan during his exile. Next is To the Flower of Heidelberg. Rizal left Paris on February 1, 1886 after acquiring enough experience in the clinic of Dr. Wecker. He was set to go to Germany. He visited Strasbourg and other German towns. On February 3, 1886, he arrived in Heidelberg, a historic city in Germany famous for its old university and romantic surroundings. Rizal lived in a boarding house with some German law students. The German students found out that Rizal was a good chess player and made him a member of the Chess Players Club. Rizal stayed in Heidelberg from February 7 to August 9, 1886. After a few days, he was transferred to a boarding house which was near University of Heidelberg. He worked at the University Eye Hospital under the direction of Dr. Otto Becker and attended the lectures of Dr. Becker and Professor Wilhelm Kuhne at the university. At weekends, he visited the scenic spots around Heidelberg, which includes the Heidelberg Castle, the romantic Neckar Riviera, the theater, and the old churches. Rizal noticed that the German Catholics and Protestants practiced ecumenism wherein they lived together in harmony and cordiality. On April 22, 1886, spring on Heidelberg, he wrote a poem to the beautiful blooming flowers at the Neckar River. Rizal's favorite flower is the light blue, which means forget-me-not. Next is Rizal with Pastor Ulmer at Wilhelmsfield. Rizal went to Wilhelmsfield on April 26, 1886 to board with Lutheran pastor Dr. Karl Ulmer and his family. Celebrated his 25th birthday with Dr. Ulmer, Rizal then spent 3 months summer vacation at Wilhelmsfield, a mountainous village close to Heidelberg. He stayed at the vicarage of a kind Protestant pastor, Dr. Karl Ulmer. He was very delighted in his stay at the Ulmers. May 29, 1887, when Rizal wrote from Munich to Friedrich. Next is the first letter to Blumentritt. Rizal became a member of the Chess Club Germany on July 14, 1886. On July 31, 1886, Rizal wrote his first letter in German to Professor Ferdinand Blumentritt. With the letter, Rizal sent the book entitled Arithmetica or Arithmetic and was published in 2 languages, Spanish and Tagalog. Rizal impressed Blumentritt because of his letter and they became friends. Blumentritt, the Austrian, became the best friend of Rizal, the Filipino. Next is the 5th centenary of Heidelberg. Rizal was fortunate to be sojourning in Heidelberg when the famous University of Heidelberg held its 5th centenary celebration on August 6 of 1886. It was 3 days before his departure, and he was sad because he had to come to love the land and the beautiful city. He left Heidelberg for Leipzig on August 9, 1886 and traveled through the cities by the Rhine River on a train. Rizal stayed in Leipzig from August 15 to August 29, 1886. He stayed longer there because it has the cheapest cost of living in Europe. Next is Rizal in Leipzig and Dresden. He boarded a train and visited various cities of Germany until arriving in Leipzig on August 14, 1886. He attended some lectures in the University of Leipzig and befriended Professor Friedrich Rizal, a famous German historian, and Dr. Hans Mayer, a German anthropologist. Rizal translated William Tell from German to Filipino so that Filipinos might know the story of that champion of Swiss independence. He also translated into Filipino Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. Cost of living in Leipzig is the cheapest in Europe, so he stayed there for 2 months and a half. During his stay, he corrected some chapters in his second novel and also had time for exercise. He also worked as a proofreader in a publishing firm and earning some money. At Dresden, Rizal met Dr. Adolf Mayer, the director of the Anthropological and Ethnological Museum. He stayed only 2 days in the city. He heard the Holy Mass in a Catholic church which greatly impressed him, for he wrote, "Truly I have never in my life heard a Mass whose music had greater sublimity and intonation." Morning of November 1, Rizal left Dresden by train, reaching Berlin in the evening. Next is Rizal's welcome in scientific circle. Rizal liked Berlin because of its atmosphere, which was very scientific, and the absence of race prejudice. Also, there he met Dr. Fyodor Jukor, author of The Travels in the Philippines, a book that Rizal admired because of its keen observances in the Philippine setting. Dr. Jaguar in turn introduced Rizal to Dr. Rudolf Virchow, a famous anthropologist, and to his son, Dr. Hans Virchow, professor of descriptive anatomy. Rizal worked in the clinic of Dr. Karl Ernest Schweger, a famous German ophthalmologist, Dr. Joes, a noted German geographer. Rizal was the first Asian to be accorded with honors for being a member of the Anthropological Society, the Ethnological Society, and the Geographical Society of Berlin. Dr. Virchow recognized Rizal's genius, invited him to give a lecture before the Ethnographic Society of Berlin. Rizal wrote a scholarly paper entitled Taglish Birkens, a Tagalog metrical art, which elicited favorable comments from all scientific quarters.
Hello everyone, once again I am Charles Jim Salarde, and to this slide we're going to talk about Rizal's life in Berlin. Jose Rizal lived in Berlin, Germany from November 1, 1886 to May 11, 1887. Rizal led a metallurgical life in Berlin. He worked as an assistant by day and attended lectures at night. He kept himself physically fit by daily exercises and speaking German, French, and Italian. This is the 5 reasons why Rizal lived in Germany. First, to gain further knowledge of ophthalmology. Second, further his studies at sciences and languages. Third, observe the economic and political conditions of the German nation. Fourth, associate with famous German scientists and scholars. And lastly, publish his novel Noli Me Tangere. Rizal took private lessons in the French language under Madame Luce Serdelet in order to master the French language. He spent his leisure moments touring the countrysides of Berlin and observing the culture and life of the people. Now let's talk about Rizal with German woman. On March 11, 1886, Rizal wrote a letter addressed to his sister Trinidad expressing his high regard and admiration for German woman because he said German woman is a serious, diligent, educated, and friendly, while Spanish woman gossipy, frivolous, and quarrelsome. Now let's talk about German customs. He also made sketches of the things he saw about observing culture. Rizal greatly admired the German Yuletide custom, wherein Germans would take bushes of pine tree and dress it up with lanterns, papers, and candies. Another interesting custom in Germany is that when a man has nobody to introduce him to the other guest, he bow his head to the guest and introduce himself to the other guest and shake hands of everyone in the room. Let's move on to the next slide. Rizal's darkest winter. Not all the experiences of Rizal in Germany were good. There is one winter time in 1886 wherein he lived in poverty because no money arrived from Calamba and he was flat broke. During that time, he only eats one meal a day and had to wash his clothes himself because he could not afford to pay the laundry. On Calamba, Pasiano tried to raise money but crops have failed due to the locust and sugar market collapse. Now let's move on. Let's talk about the publication of Noli Me Tangere. Noli Me Tangere was published in Berlin. Noli Me Tangere during Rizal's stays in Berlin was unable to be published. But with the help of Maximo Viola, who gave him the necessary funds to publish the novel, Noli Me Tangere was published. Viola loaned Rizal money for publishing and for Rizal's living expenses. With that, Rizal and Viola happily celebrated the Christmas of 1886 in Berlin. During the printing of Noli, the chief police of Berlin paid a sudden visit to Rizal's boarding house. The chief asked for Rizal's passport, but Rizal couldn't show any. The chief told him to secure a passport within 4 days, otherwise he would be deported. Rizal failed in obtaining his passport and presented himself at the German police office, politely apologizing for his failure. The police then told him that Rizal was suspected as a French spy because he came from Paris and knew the language of the French people so well. Rizal explained in German to the police that he was not a French spy, but a Filipino physician and scientist. With that, he was allowed to stay freely in Germany. On March 21, 1887, the Noli Me Tangere came off the printing press. Rizal immediately sent copies to his intimate friends including Blumentritt, Dr. Antonio Jaina, Mariano Ponce, and Felix R. Hidalgo as a token of his appreciation of gratitude. Rizal gave Viola the galley proofs of Noli carefully rolled around the pen that he used in writing. It also has a dedication. To my dear friend, Maximo Viola, the first to read and appreciate my work, Jose Rizal. Noli Me Tangere was solely dedicated to the Philippines. He described the Philippines as a patient with cancer that even with the most careful touch, it awakens in it the sharpest pain. The friends of Rizal hailed the novel, appreciated its content, and deeply touched and awakened by its fine truth. Of all the congratulatory letters received by Rizal about Noli, that from Lamentrate was significant. First of all, wrote Lamentrate, accept my cordial congratulations for your beautiful novel about customs which interest me extraordinarily. Your work, as we Germans said, has been written with the blood of the heart, and so the heart also speaks. I continue reading it with much interest. And now, let's talk about some information about the publication of Noli Me Tangere. Noli Me Tangere was Rizal's first novel. He was 26 years old at that time of its publication. Noli Me Tangere covers all the phases of the Philippine life. Noli Me Tangere in Latin phrase, which means touch me not. This is taken from the Gospel of St. Luke, Gospel of St. John, chapter 20, verses 13 to 17. The title has its origin a famous biblical passage, the Gospel of John, 20th chapter, which narrated how Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene after his resurrection. It says in verse 17, Then Jesus speaks to her, Touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brothers and tell them, I am going to my Father, to my God and your God. Rizal has seen in the Padre Museum in Madrid the famous painting of Corrego which depicts the scene. Rizal wanted perhaps to express with the novel that for the first time he was dealing with problems and conditions, which up to then no one dared to touch on. In any case, the title can only mean that here reference was made a taboo, which up to then was considered untouchable. An Eagle Flight 1900 and The Social Concert 1912 is the English translation of the title of the novel Noli Me Tangere that has been used. Noli Me Tangere was a name used by local Filipinos for cancer of the eyelids, that as an ophthalmologist himself Rizal was influenced by this fact is suggested in the novel's dedication, To My Fatherland. The primary objectives of Dr. Jose Rizal in writing the Noli Me Tangere. In another letter to Ferdinand Blumentritt, Rizal described what he expects when the novel will be in circulation. Finally, he pointed out his primary objective. First, to defend Filipino people from the foreign accusations of foolishness and lack of knowledge. Second, to show how the Filipino people lives during Spanish colonial period and the cries and hopes of his countrymen against abusive officials. Third, to discuss what religion and belief can really do to everyday lives. And for the last, to expose the cruelties, graft, and corruption of the false government and honestly show the wrongdoings of Filipino that led to the further failure. Now, let's talk about the background of Noli Me Tangere. Noli Me Tangere is considered to be romantic, but it is more socio-historical because of its nature. Most of issues discussed in Noli can still be seen today. Rizal drew his inspiration in writing Noli Me Tangere from a book entitled Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was authored by Harriet Beecher Stowe. When Rizal read Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel on the abuse of black slaves in America, he thought that the novel should be written about the abuses that Philippine natives were suffering at the hands of the Spanish friars. He had an inspiration to write his own novel with the same topic to expose Spanish colonial abuse in print. Beecher Stowe novels describes black slavery abuse done by white men. Rizal also consulted his friend Dr. Ferdinand Blumentritt on the issues he tackled in the book and the need to write about those issues. A reunion of Filipinos at the house of his friend Pedro A. Paterna in Madrid on January 2, 1884, Rizal proposed the writing of a novel about the Philippines written by a group of Filipinos. His proposal was unanimously approved by the Filipinos present at the time, among whom were Pedro, Maximo Viola, and Antonio Paterno, Rociano Lopez Haina, Evarista Aguirre, Eduardo Delete, and Julio Doriente and Valentin Ventura. However, this project did not materialize. The people who agreed to help Rizal with the novel did not write anything. Initially, the novel was planned to cover the describe of phases of Filipino life, but almost everybody wanted to write about women. Rizal even saw his companions spend more time gambling and flirting with Spanish women. Because of this, he pulled out of the plan and co-writing with others and decided to draft the novel alone. Now, let's tackle the history of publication of Noli Me Tangere. On December 1886, Noli Me Tangere was finished written by Jose Rizal. February 1887, final revision has made. On February 21, 1887, Noli Me Tangere was finished and ready for printing. Rizal finished the novel on December 1886. At first, according to one of Rizal's biographers, Rizal feared the novel may not be printed and it will be remain unread. He was struggling with financial constraint at the time and thought it would be hard to pursue printing the novel. A financial aid came from a friend named Maximo Viola. Rizal at first, however, hesitated but Viola insisted and ended up lending Rizal 300 pesos for 200,000 copies. Noli was eventually printed in Berlin, Germany. The printing was finished earlier than the estimated 5 months. On March 21, 1887, Rizal had sent copies of the novel to his friend Clemente. The book was banned by Spanish authorities in the Philippines, although copies were smuggled into the country. The first Philippine edition and the second published edition was finally printed in 1889 in Manila by Joffrey A. Campana in Ascolta.
Hello, classmate. Are you still there? Are you still listening? Okay, to lift up the mood, we prepare some intermission number for you. We hope that you will like it. Without further ado, please all welcome Mr. Agustin Trix Garong D6.
Huwag ka nang umalis, huwag ka na lumayo. Dito ka lang sa aking tabi. Nang dumating ka sa buhay ko, binago mo lahat, pati ang aking mundo. Binigyan mo ng ngiti at ligayang buhay. Pangako ko sa'yo na hindi kita iiwan. I've been awake for a while now. You got me feeling like a child now. 'Cause every time I see your bubbly face, I get the tingles in a silly place. It stars in my toes and I crinkle my nose. Wherever it goes, I always know that you make me smile. Please stay for a while now. Just take your time wherever you go.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation of Mr. Garong. Now, let's go back to our presentation.
The Philippines, Noli Me Tangere, Jose Rizal in the Spanish Fires. In 1885, he decided to return to the Philippines, although his friends and supporters were unanimous in arguing him not to go as he will surely be arrested. Despite their warnings, Dr. Jose Rizal left Marcellus, France on July 3, 1887 to return to Manila. He could not explain to them that he studied medicine, especially ophthalmology, to cure his mother's cataract problem which threatened to make her completely blind. He just had to go back. When Dr. Jose Rizal arrived in Manila, there was no one there to greet him, not even the Spanish police. After a few days, he left for Calamba to see his family. When he arrived in his hometown, he was given a hero's welcome, the local boy who made good. Rizal was determined to come back to the Philippines for the following reasons. First, to operate his mother's eye. Second, to serve his people who had long been oppressed by Spaniards. And lastly, to find out for himself how the Noli Me Tangere and his other writings were affecting Filipinos and Spaniards. Dr. Jose Rizal successfully removed the cataract of his mother. His first surgical operation. Word quickly spread the German doctor had arrived who could make the blind see. Everyone in the whole country with the eye problem trooped to Calamba to be treated by Rizal, who charged according to the financial means of the patient. The storm over the Noli Tangere. As Rizal was peacefully living in Calamba, his enemies plotted his doom. Governor General Emilio Terrero wrote to Rizal requesting to come to Malacanang Palace. Somebody had whispered to his ear that the Noli contained subversive ideas. Rizal explained to him that he merely exposed the truth, but did not advocate subversive ideas. He was pleased by Rizal's explanation and curious about the book. He asked for a copy of the novel. Rizal had no copy that time but promised to send one for him. The Attackers of Noli Me Tangere. Archbishop Pedro Payo, a Dominican Archbishop of Manila, sent a copy of the Noli Me Tangere to Father Gregorio Echeverria, rector of the University of Santo Tomas, to examine the novel. The committee that examined the Noli Me Tangere were composed of Dominican professors. The Dominicans at University of Santo Tomas submitted a report to Governor General on August 30, 1887, declaring, "The work of Noli Me Tangere has been found heretical, impious, and scandalous from the religious perspective, anti-patriotic, and subversive from the political point of view, injurious to the Spanish government and its proceeding in the island." The Dominicans had developed a fierce hatred for Rizal that went beyond his novel. It had to do with the politics of Calamba. Governor General Terrero was not satisfied with the report, so he sent the novel to the Permanent Commission of the Censorship, which was composed of priests and lawyers. Father Salvador Font, Augustinian friar Karate of Tondo, was the head of the commission. The group found that the novel contained subversive ideas against the church in Spain and recommended that the importation, reproduction, and circulation of the pernicious book in the islands be absolutely prohibited. The newspaper published Font's written report. The banning of the Noli Me Tangere served to make it popular. The masses supported the book. Noli Me Tangere in Spain. The novel was firstly attacked in the session hall of the Senate of the Spain Cortes. Senators General Jose de Salamanca, General Luis de Pando, Senior Fernando Vida, Vicente Barrantes, Spanish Academician of Madrid who formerly occupied high government position in the Philippines, bitterly criticized the novel in an article published in the Madrid newspaper, La España Moderna. The defenders of the Noli Me Tangere, propagandists such as Marcelo H. del Pilar, Graciano Lopez Jaina, Antonio Regidor, Mariano Ponce rushed to uphold the truth of the Noli. Father Francisco de Paul Sanchez, Rizal's favorite teacher in the Ateneo, defended and praised the novel in public. Don Sigismondo Moret, former Minister of the Crown, Professor Miguel Moraita, historian in the Statesman, Professor Ferdinand Blumentritt, Rizal best friend. Father Vicente Garcia, a Filipino Catholic priest, scholar, a theologian of the Manila Cathedral, and a Tagalog translator of the famous Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempf, under the pen name Justo Desiderio Magalang, he wrote a defense of the novel published in Singapore. The Problem in Calamba. Influenced by the novel, Governor General Emilio Terrero ordered a government investigation of the friar estates to remedy whatever iniquities might have been present in connection with the land taxes and with tenant relations. One of the friar estates affected was the Calamba Hacienda by Dominican order since 1883. Upon hearing about the investigation, the people of Calamba asked help from Rizal to gather facts and lists of the grievances so that the government might institute certain agrarian reforms. The findings submitted by Rizal. The Hacienda of the Dominican order compromised not only the lands around the Calamba, but the whole town of Calamba. The profits of Dominican order continually increased because of the arbitrary increase of the rentals paid by the tenants. The hacienda owner never contributed a single centavo for the celebration of the town fiesta, for the education of the children, and for the improvement of the agriculture. Tenants who spent much labor in clearing the lands were disposed of the haciendas for flimsy reasons. High rates of interest were arbitrarily charged from the tenants for the late payment of the rentals. When the rentals could not be paid, the hacienda management confiscated the work, animals, tools, and the farm implements of the tenants. The friars' reaction. Rizal exposure to the deplorable condition angered the friars. The friars exerted pressure to the Malacanang to eliminate Rizal. They asked Governor General Terrero to deport Rizal, but the latter refused further his lack of charges against Rizal in court. Anonymous threats in Rizal's life alarmed his parents, sibling, Andre, his bodyguard, friends, and even Terrero. Thus, they all advised him to leave the country. That is the reason why Rizal left the Philippines. His presence in Calamba was jeopardizing the safety and the happiness of his family and friends. He could not fight better his enemies and serve his country's cause with a greater efficacy by writing in foreign countries. On the next slide, let's talk about the reaction and legacy. This novel and its sequel, El Filibusterismo, nicknamed El Fili, were banned in some parts of the Philippines because of their portrayal of corruption and abuse by country's Spanish government and clergy. Copies of the book were smuggled, and nevertheless, and when Rizal returned to the Philippines after completing medical studies, he quickly ran off full of the local government. Rizal was exiled to Dapitan, then later arrested for inciting rebellion, based largely on his writing. Rizal was executed at Luneta outside the wall of Manila by a firing squad at the age of 35. Rizal depicted nationality by emphasizing the qualities of Filipinos, the devotion of Filipina and her influence on man's life, the deep sense of gratitude, and the solid common sense of Filipinos under the Spanish regime.
Social impact. The work was instrumental in creating a unified Filipino national identity and consciousness, as many natives previously identified with their respective regions. It lampooned, caricatured, and exposed various elements in colonial society. Two characters in particular have become classics in Filipino culture. Maria Clara, who has become a personification of the ideal Filipino woman, loving and unwavering in her loyalty to her spouse. And the priest Father Damaso, who reflects the convert fathering of illegitimate children by members of the Spanish clergy. The book indirectly influenced revolution, even though the author actually advocated direct representation to the Spanish government and a larger role for the Philippines within Spain's political affairs. In 1956, the Congress of the Philippines passed the Republic Act 1425, more popularly known as the Rizal Law, which all levels of Philippine schools to teach the novel as part of their curriculum. Noli Tangere is being taught to the third-year secondary school students, while its sequel El Filibusterismo is being taught for the fourth-year secondary school students. The novels are incorporated to their study and survey of Philippine literature. Noli Tangere major characters. Juan Crisostomo Ibarra y Magsalin, commonly referred to the novel as Ibarra or Crisostomo, is the novel's protagonist, the mestizo, son of Filipino businesswoman Don Rafael Ibarra. He studied in Europe for 7 years. Ibarra is also Maria Clara's fiancé. Maria Clara, a crayon sketch of Leonor Rivera keeping by Rizal. Rivera, who was Rizal's longtime love interest, in the commonly accepted basis for the Maria Clara character. Maria Clara de los Santos, commonly referred to as Maria Clara, is Ibarra's fiancé and the most beautiful and widely celebrated girl in San Diego. He was raised by Capitan Tiago de los Santos and his cousin Isabel. In the latter parts of the novel, she was revealed to be an illegitimate daughter of Father Damaso, the former curate of the town, and Doña Pia Alba, Capitan Tiago's wife, who had died giving birth to Maria Clara. At the novel's end, a heartbroken yet resolved Maria Clara entered the Beaterio de Santa Clara. After learning the truth of her parentage and mistakenly believing that her lover, Crisostomo, had been killed. In the epilogue, Rizal stated that it is unknown whether Maria Clara is still living within the walls of the convent or is already dead. Capitan Tiago. Don Santiago de los Santos, known by his nickname Tiago and political title Capitan Tiagos, said to be the richest man in the region of Binondo and possessed the real properties in Pampanga and Laguna de Bay. He is also said to be a good Catholic, a friend of Spanish government, and thus was considered a Spaniard by the colonial elite. Capitan Tiago never attended school, so he became a domestic helper for the Dominican friar who gave him an informal education. He later married Pia Alba from Santa Cruz. Padre Damaso, Damaso Verdalogas, better known as Padre Damaso, is a Franciscan friar and the former parish curate of San Diego. He is notorious for speaking with harsh words, high-handedness, and his cruelty during his ministry in the town. An enemy of Crisostomo's father, Don Rafael Ibarra. Damaso is revealed to be Maria Clara's biological father. Later, he became Maria Clara had bitter arguments on whether she would marry Alfonso Linares de España Padanya or entry the Noli. At the end of the novel, he is again reassigned to the distant town of later found dead in his bed. Elias. Elias is Ibarra's mysterious friend and ally. Elias made his first appearance as a pilot during a picnic of Ibarra and Maria Clara and her friends. The 50th chapter of the novel explores the past of Elias and history of his family. About 60 years before the events of Noli Tangere, Elias' grandfather Ingkong, in his youth, worked as a bookkeeper in a Manila office. One night, the office burned down, and Don Pedro Ibarramendia, the Spaniard owner, accused him of arson. Ingkong was prosecuted, and upon release was shunned by the community as a dangerous lawbreaker. His wife Impong turned to prostitution to support themselves, but eventually they were driven into the hinterlands. There, Impong bore her first son, Balat. Driven to depression, Ingkong hangs himself deep in the forest. Impong was sickly for lack of nourishment in the forest and was not strong enough to cut down his corpse and bury him. And Balat was then still very young. The stench led to their discovery, and Impong was accused of killing her husband. She and her son fled to another province where she bore another son. Balat grew up to be a bandit. Eventually, Balat's legend grew, but so did the efforts to capture him. And when he finally fell, he was cut limb, and his head was deposited in front of Impong's house. Seeing the head of her son, Impong died of shock. Impong's younger son, knowing their deaths would somehow be imputed upon him, fled to the province of Tayabas, where he met and fell in love with the rich heiress. They have an affair, and the lady got pregnant. But before they could marry, his records were dug up. Then the father, who disapproved of him from the start, had him imprisoned. The lady gave birth to Elias and his twin sister but died while the two were still children. Nonetheless, the twins were well cared for, with Elias even going to Ateneo and his sister going to La Concordia. But as they wanted to become farmers, they eventually turned to Tayabas. He and his sister grew up not knowing about their father, being told that their father had long died. Elias grew up to be a young abusive brat who took particularly joy in berating an elderly servant who nevertheless always submitted to his whims. His sister was more refined and eventually was betrothed to be a fine young woman. But before they could marry, Elias ran afoul with a distant relative. The relative struck back by telling him about his true parentage. The verbal scuffle mounted to the point where records were dug up, and Elias and his sister, as well as a good part of town, learned the truth. The elderly servant who Elias frequently abused was their father. The scandal caused the engagement of Elias' sister to break off. Depressed, the girl disappeared one day and was eventually found dead along the shore of the lake. Elias himself lost face before his relatives and became a wanderer from province to province. Like his son, Uncle Balat, he became a fugitive and his legend grew. But by degrees, he became the gentler, more reserved, and more noble character first introduced in the novel. Filosofong Tasio was enrolled in the philosophy course and was a talented student, but his mother was a rich but superstitious matron. Like many Filipino Catholics, under the sway of the friars, she believed that too much learning condemned souls to hell. She then made Tasio choose between leaving college or becoming a priest. Since he was in love, he left college and married. Tasio lost his wife and mother within a year. Seeking consultation, and in order to free himself from the cockpit and dangers of idleness, he took up his studies once more. But he became so addicted to his studies and the purchase of books that he entirely neglected his fortune and gradually ruined himself. Persons of culture called him Don Anastasio, or Filosofong Tasio, while the great crowd of the ignorant knew him as Tasio el Loco, on his account of his peculiar ideas and his eccentric manner of dealing with others. Seeking for reforms from the government, he expresses his ideas in paper written in a cryptographic alphabet similar from hieroglyphs and Coptic figures, hoping that the future generations may be able to decipher it. Doña Victorina de los Reyes de Espandana, commonly known as Doña Victorina, is an ambitious Filipina who classifies herself as a Spaniard and mimics Spanish ladies by putting on heavy makeup. The novel narrates Doña Victorina's younger days. She had lots of admirers, but she spurned them all because none of them were Spaniards. Later on, she met and married Don Tiburcio de Espandana, an official of the Customs Bureau 10 years her junior. However, their marriage is childless. Her husband assumes that the title of medical doctor even though he had never attended medical school. Using fake documents and certificates, Tiburcio illegally practices medicine. Tiburcio's usage of the title doctor consequently makes Victorina assumes the title DRA, Doctora Female Doctor. Apparently, she uses the whole name Doña Victorina de los Reyes de Espadaña, with a double D to emphasize her marriage surname. She seems to feel that his awkward titling makes her more sophisticated. Sisa, Crispin, and Basilio. Sisa, Crispin, and Basilio represents a Filipino family persecuted by the Spaniards or Spanish authorities. Narcisa or Sisa is the deranged mother of Basilio and Crispin. Described as beautiful and young, although she loves her children very much, she cannot protect them from the beatings of her husband, Pedro. Crispin is Sisa's 7-year-old son, an altar boy. He was unjustly accused for stealing money from the church. After failing to force Crispin to return the money, he allegedly stole Father Salvi and the head sacristan killed him. It is not directly stated that he was killed, but a dream of Basilio suggested that Crispin died during his encounter with Padre Salvi and his minions. Basilio is Sisa's 10-year-old son, an acolyth tasked to ring the church's bells for the Angelus. He forced the dread of losing his young brother and the descent of his mother into insanity. At the end of the novel, a dying Elias requested Basilio to cremate him and Sisa in the woods in exchange for a chest of gold located nearby. He later played a major role in El Filibusterismo. Salome is Elias' sweetheart. She lived in the little house by the lake, and though Elias would like to marry her, he tells her that it would do her or their children no good to be related to a fugitive like himself. In the original publication of Noli Tangere, the chapter that explores that identity of Elias and Salome was omitted, classifying her as a totally non-existent character. This chapter, entitled Elias y Salome, was probably the 25th chapter of the novel. However, recent editions and translations of Noli Tangere includes this chapter either on the appendix or as chapter 10.
Let's now move on to the other characters known in Noli Tangere. There are a number of secondary and minor characters in Noli Tangere. Items indicated inside the parentheses are the standard Filipinization of the Spanish names in the novel. Padre Hernando de la Sibila, a Dominican friar. He is described as short and has a fair skin. He is instructed by an old priest in his order to watch Crisostomo Ibarra. Padre Bernardo Salve, the successor of Padre Damaso as the Franciscan curate of San Diego, who secretly lasts after Maria Clara. He is described to be very thin and sickly. It is also hinted that his surname, Salve, is the shorter form of Salvation, or that Salve is short for Salvaje, or savage and wild, hinting at the fact that he is willing to kill an innocent child, Crispin, whom he accused of stealing money worth 2 ounces. El Alferez, the unnamed chief of the local Guardia Civil and the husband of Doña Consolacion. He is the sworn enemy of the priests in the town's power struggle. Doña Consolacion, wife of the Alferez, nicknamed as La Musa de los Guardias Civiles, the Muse of the Civil Guard, or La Alfereza. She was a former laundrywoman who passes herself as a peninsular, and is the best remembered for her abusive treatment of Sisa. Don Tiburcio de Espadaña, a Spanish quack doctor who is weak and submissive to his pretentious wife, Doña Victorina. Teniente Guevara. A close friend of Don Rafael Ibarra, he reveals to Crisostomo how Don Rafael Ibarra's death came about. Alfonso Linares, a distant nephew of Tiburcio de Espadaña, who would later become the fiancé of Maria Clara. Although he presented himself as a practitioner of law, it was later revealed that he is, like Don Tiburcio, a fraud. He later died from medications Don Tiburcio had given him. Next is Tia Isabel, Capitan Tiago's cousin, who helped raise Maria Clara and served as a surrogate mother figure, Gobernador General or Gobernador General. Unnamed in the novel, he is the most powerful colonial official in the Philippines. He harbors great disdain for the friars and corrupt officials and sympathizes with Ibarra. Don Filipo Lino, Vice Mayor of the town of San Diego, leader of the liberals. Padre Manuel Martin, he is the linguist curate of the nearby town who delivers the sermon during San Diego's fiesta. Don Rafael Ibarra, the deceased father of Crisostomo Ibarra. Though he was the richest man in San Diego, he was also the most virtuous and generous. Doña Pia Alba, wife of Capitan Tiago and mother of Maria Clara. She died giving birth to her daughter. Capitan Tiago was supposedly the child's father, but in reality, Alba was raped by Padre Damaso. Pedro Ibarra Mendia, Crisostomo Ibarra's vast great-grandfather, who falsely accused Elias's grandfather and ruined his family. The surname was later shortened to Ibarra, hence Elias did not realize the relationship at first. Albino, a seminarian who follows Crisostomo Ibarra in a picnic with Maria Clara's friends. Don Saturnino, Ibarra Mendia, the father of Don Rafael and grandfather of Crisostomo, who is said to have founded the town of San Diego when it was still a vast forest. Grand tour to Europe with Viola, 1887. After the publication of Noli, Rizal planned to visit the important places in Europe. Rizal received his money from Pasiano worth 1,000 pesos. He immediately paid Viola the sum of 300 pesos from his kind loan. At dawn of May 11, 1887, Rizal and Viola left Berlin by train. Spring was in the air and Europe is blooming with flowers. Their destination was Dresden, one of the best cities in Germany at the time. Dresden, Rizal and Viola spent some time in Dresden. Their visit coincided with the regional flora exposition. Rizal studied different plants because he was interested in botany. They visited Dr. Adolf B. Mayer, who was overjoyed to see them. They also visited the Museum of Art, and Rizal was deeply impressed by the painting of Prometheus Bound, a Greek mythological tragedy. While strolling at the scene of the floral exposition, they met Dr. Jaeger. Dr. Jaeger advised them to wire Blumentritt of their coming because the old professor was of a nervous disposition and he might suffer a shock of their sudden visit. Their next stopover was Teschen. Rizal and Viola sent a wire to Blumentritt, as suggested by Dr. Jaeger. At 1:30 p.m. of May 13, 1887, the train with Rizal and Viola on board arrived at the railroad station at Letmeritz, Bohemia. Professor Blumentritt waited for them in the station after he received the wire. He was carrying a pencil sketch of Rizal, which letter had previously sent. Beautiful memories at Letmeritz. Professor Blumentritt warmly welcomed Rizal and Viola. For the first time, Rizal and Blumentritt met each other. They greeted each other in fluent German. Upon seeing the talented Rizal, the old professor immediately took him into heart, loving him as a son. Rizal had beautiful memories of his visit to Litmeritz. He enjoyed the warm hospitality and enjoyed the cooking of the professor's wife, Rosa. Blumentritt's children were Dolores, Conrad, and Fritz. Blumentritt showed the scenic sights and historical spots of Litmeritz. One afternoon, he invited them to a beer garden where the best beer of Bohemia was served. At the beer garden, they met the Burgomaster, or the town mayor. Blumentritt introduced the two to the Burgomaster. Rizal talked in fluent German, for which the Burgomaster and his friends were really amazed. On another afternoon, Rizal and Viola were invited to a meeting of the Tourists Club of Litmeritz. Of Blumentritt was secretary. The members of the society were amazed by the fluency of Rizal in German. Rizal painted a portrait of the kind professor and gave it to him as a commemoration of his happy hours at the professor's home. Rizal also met another renowned scientist of Europe, namely Dr. Carlos Sipilak. Rizal had a nice conversation with the Polish scholar. Blumentritt also introduced Rizal to Professor Robert Klaczak, an eminent naturalist. On their last night on Litmeritz, Rizal and Viola reciprocated Blumentritt's hospitality with a banquet. On May 16 at 9:45 a.m., Rizal and Viola left Litmeritz by train. Blumentritt and his family were at the railroad station to see them off, and they all shed tears in parting as the train departed. Rizal carried with him all the beautiful memories of his visit to Litmeritz. Let's now move on to their visit at Prague. After their stay at Litmeritz, Rizal together with Viola visited the city of Prague. They carried recommendation letters from Blumentritt to Dr. Holcomb, a professor of natural history in the University of Prague. The kind-hearted professor, together with his wife and daughters, welcomed them and showed them the city's historic spots. Rizal and Viola visited the tomb of Copernicus, the Museum of Natural History, the bacteriological laboratories, and the famous cave where San Juan Nepomuceno was imprisoned, and the bridge from which the saint was hurled into the river. After their stay at the home of the Welcomes, Rizal and Viola left Prague and went to Brann. Their visit in Vienna. On May 20, Rizal and Viola arrived in the beautiful Vienna. Famous in songs and story, this city very much fascinated Rizal because of its beautiful buildings, religions, images, and charm. Rizal and Viola presented a letter of recommendation from Blumentritt to Non Fenfals, one of the greatest novelists in Europe during that time. The great novelist was impressed by Rizal's genius. Later, he spoke highly of Rizal. Also in Vienna, Rizal received his lost diamond stickpin. It was found by a man in Hotel Krebs and was given to Blumentritt, who in turn forwarded it into Rizal. The two stayed at Hotel Metropole. They visited the city's interesting places such as churches, museums, art galleries, theaters, and parks.
Once again, hello classmate, are you still there? Are you still listening? Once again, to lift up the mood, we prepare another intermission number for you. We hope that you will like it. And without further ado, please all welcome Mr. Jinbir Anyel.
Siguro nga'y wala nang natira sa mga sinulat mo na para sa akin. Alam kong luha ang bumubura, ngunit hayaan mo na lang. Walang saysayang panalangin ko, kundi ako ang hanapin mo. Kahit sigaw pa ang pagsamo ko sa'yo, bakit di mo dama ito?
When your legs don't work like they used to before, and I can't sweep you off of your feet.
Will your mouth still remember the taste of my love? Will your eyes still smile from your cheeks? And darling, I will be loving you till 70. And baby, my heart is still less hard at 23. And I'm thinking about how people fall in love in mysterious ways. Maybe just a touch of a hand. Well, me, you fall in love with you every single day. And I just wanna tell you who I am. So honey, now take me into your loving arms. Kiss me under the light of 1,000 stars. Place your head on my beating heart. I'm thinking out loud, maybe we found love right where we are.
Now let's go back to our presentation.
Good day everyone. So now I'm going to discuss about from Linz to Rainfall. The river voyage ended in Linz. They traveled overland to Salzburg and from there to Munich, where they sojourned for a short time to savor the famous Munich beer reputed to be the best in Germany. From Munich, they went to Nuremberg, an old city of Germany among the sites where the horrible torture machines used by the Inquisition in which Rizal examined carefully. Viola and Rizal were greatly impressed by the manufacture of dolls in Nuremberg. After Munich, they visited The cathedral of this city was the largest and the tallest in all Germany. Viola related that he and Rizal climbed its many hundred steps, Viola getting dizzy, but Rizal was not. From they went to Stuttgart, Baden, and then Rainfall. At Rainfall, they saw the waterfall, which was the most beautiful waterfall of Europe. And now we are going to crossing the frontier to Switzerland. From Rainfall, they crossed the frontier to Schaffhausen, Switzerland. They stayed in the city from June 2 to 3, 1887. Then they continued their tour to Basel, Bern, and Lausanne. After sightseeing in Lausanne, Rizal and Viola left on a little boat crossing the foggy Leman Lake to Geneva. Geneva. Rizal and Viola visited Geneva. This Swiss city is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, which was visited by world tourists every year. The people of Geneva were linguists speaking French, German, and Italian. Rizal conversed with them in these three languages. Rizal and Viola also went boating on the lake. Rizal showed his rowing prowess, which he acquired during his boyhood days in Calamba. On June 19, 1887, it was Rizal's 26th birthday and treated Viola to a blowout. Rizal and Viola spent 15 days in Geneva. On June 23, they parted ways. Viola decided to return to Barcelona, while Rizal continued to his tour to Italy. In Madrid Exposition. During his tour in Europe, Rizal received sad news from his friends in Madrid of the deplorable conditions of primitive Igorots who were exhibited in these expositions, some of whom died and whose clothing are inappropriate for the climate of Madrid, and crude weapons were objects of mockery and laughter by the Spanish people and press. Rizal, being a champion of human dignity, was outraged. And now in Italy. Rizal went to Italy. He visited Turin, Milan, Venice, and Florence. On June 27, 1887, Rizal reached Rome. He was thrilled by the sights and memories of the Eternal City. On June 29th, Rizal visited for the first time the Vatican, the city of the popes, and the capital Christendom. He was impressed by the magnificent edifices, particularly of St. Peter's Church, which was also his feast day during that time. Every night after sightseeing the whole day, Rizal returned to his hotel very tired. I am tired as a dog, he wrote to Blumentritt, but I will sleep as a god. After a week of staying in Rome, he prepared to return to the Philippines. He had already written to his father that he was coming home. To be continued. Rizal visit to United States in 1888. Rizal first saw America on April 28, 1888. His arrival in this great country was marred by racial prejudice. He saw discriminatory treatment of the Chinese and the Negros by the white Americans. And let's talk about arrival in San Francisco. Saturday, April 28, 1888, the steamer Belgic docked at San Francisco. American health and authorities did not let the passengers to land for 1 week because of the rumored cholera epidemic. American Health Authority placed the ship under quarantine on the ground that it came from the far east where cholera epidemic was alleged to be raging. Rizal knew there was no cholera epidemic that time and he protests with other passengers the unjustifiable actions of American authorities. We have two agencies that certified Belgium is free from cholera epidemic. The first one is the American Consul of Japan and the second one is the British Governor of Hong Kong. Rizal soon discovered that it was motivated by politics and the ship was carrying 643 Chinese coolies. Chinese coolies, they are unskilled Oriental laborer. They were displacing white laborers in railroad construction camp. The reason for placing the ship under quarantine was motivated by politics. But Rizal was questioning how come 700 bolts of silk were unloaded without fumigation. After a week, Rizal together with other first-class passengers were permitted to land. Chinese and Japanese. The passengers of the second and third class accommodations who were forced to remain on board for a longer quarantine period. And now, Rizal in San Francisco. May 4, 1888, the day Rizal was permitted to go ashore and registered at the Palace Hotel, which was then considered a first-class hotel in the city. Palace Hotel, Rizal registered here which was then considered a first-class hotel in the City Market Street, the best street in San Francisco according to Rizal. And now, Leland Stanford, a millionaire senator representing California in the U.S. Senate at that time. He was the founder and benefactor of Stanford University at Palo Alto, California. Rizal stayed also in San Francisco for 2 days, May 4 to 6, 1888. Grover Cleveland is the President of the United States at the time, and across the American continent, May 6, 1888, it was Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Rizal left San Francisco for Oakland 9 miles across San Francisco Bay by ferry boat. May 7, 1888, it was morning. Rizal awoke and had a good breakfast at Reno, Nevada, now glamorized by American high-pressure propaganda as the biggest little city in the world. And from May 7 to May 13, Rizal wrote in his diary the beautiful memories from Nevada, Chicago until he reached Albany. Via train Sacramento, where he ate his supper 75 cents and slept at his couch. Reno, Nevada, the biggest little city where he had his breakfast. Utah, where he saw Mormons thickly populated. Colorado, a lot of snow and pine trees. Nebraska, Omaha City, as big as San Francisco. Missouri River twice as big as Pasig River. Chicago a lot of Indians in cigar stores. Albany, where he saw the Hudson River. New York, which he considers a big city, where he stayed for 3 days. He left the United States on May 16, 1888 for Liverpool, London on board the City of Rome, the second largest ship in the world, Great Eastern, largest ship in the world during his time. George Washington. He is a great man who Rizal thinks has no equal in his country and also the first president of the US. Rizal impression of America. Here are some good impressions. The first one is the material progress of the country as shown in the great cities, huge farms, flourishing industries, and busy factories. The second one is the drive and the energy of the American people. The third, the natural beauty of the land. Fourth, the high standard of living, and lastly, the opportunities for better life offered to poor immigrants. And here are some bad impressions. First, non-existence of true civil liberty as Negro cannot marry an American and vice versa. The second one is the existence of racial prejudice as shown in their hatred of the Chinese, Japanese, and Negroes. Third, the valuing of money over human life. And lastly, lack of racial equality. And let's move on America for Rizal. The land par excellence of freedom but only for the whites. Rizal said this to Jose Alejandrino, an engineering student from Belgium.
Thank you, Miss Janice, for discussing the last topic. And that is the end of our discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much for listening and staying with us. And now, if you have some questions, queries, comments, and suggestions, feel free to state them after this video ends. Before we end this video, we have a short video here that includes my group mates with their designated task. Also, it included the references and credits to all pictures, music, PowerPoint presentation, and video that we used to these presentations. Once again, thank you very much.